Hey everyone, and welcome to my first look in quite some time, and we're looking at Saryn 3.0, 3.5, 3.7? Honestly, I'm not even sure what version we're on now at this point. However, kind of out of the blue, we ended up with the Saryn rework, and after a ton of feedback on the first iteration, we have what we've got now. So let's take a look at what's changed and how I've gone about building her now. The second rework for Saryn for me ended up with her being one of the most overcomplicated frames in the game. Mostly caused by the fact that a lot of her power came from synergies between powers that the game simply does not explain at all. And that meant that a lot of people never really understood what she did and exactly how to get the best out of her, and that led to the opinion she wasn't very good at all. The newest rework has kind of fixed that, although not entirely, as I'm going to show when I'm talking about the changes. So let's start off with the largest change, and that is to her Spores. Spores no longer have any duration on them at all, so you can keep them spreading. If you can keep them spreading, they can go indefinitely, basically. The longer they're active, they will build up additional damage per tick, and that's affected by the number of infected enemies. The more enemies that you've got infected, the quicker the damage ramps up. The spore damage is corrosive with a 50% status chance, and that means it's going to strip armor really efficiently and really effectively. The damage per tick and the status chance is affected by power strength. When the spores are no longer affecting any targets, the damage will no longer disappear completely, but will decay over time. That delay is affected by both power strength and power duration, so the more of both that you have, the slower it will decay. The spores themselves can be spread by popping the spore directly, by hitting it with a weapon or ability, and all spores on a target will be popped if the target dies to Miasma or to Molt, or by hitting the target anywhere at all while Toxic Lash is active. The one thing I've not mentioned so far is range, which is 16 meters at base, but is affected by range mods. Now I think that's all I need to talk about with Spores, but as you can see, the overcomplicated nature of Saryn definitely has not been fixed when it comes to Spores. If you check out the patch notes relating to how Spores work, it's like 30 or something lines long, yet in-game it gets barely any explanation at all. So half of the things that Spores do, and what they react to, are actually not explained at all. Something that really does not help complicated abilities like this. The removal of the spore to spread automatically on enemy death really did hurt its usability at lower level. Trying to get spores to keep spreading while it kills effectively means at a lower level she is incredibly energy hungry, something which the recast ability and the half energy cost when you do a recast does help with, but that makes keeping her going really rather difficult. But if you do manage to keep her going, she can do a really silly amount of damage per second with her spores. Like, if you get it over a whole bunch of enemies, it's very easy to lose track, and while you can only see maybe like 800 damage a tick on an enemy, if you think that could be 30 enemies, it could be 40 enemies, the amount of enemies infected is infinite, so the actual damage output is slightly ridiculous. But it is very easy to kind of miss that and not really sort of grasp quite how much damage you're doing at any one point. Molt didn't get a huge amount of changes, to be honest. The old synergy it had with Spores no longer works, so no more 1-2 spam. So it's now really a big part of Saryn's survivability. When you cast the ability, she sheds her skin, which will draw enemy aggro onto it. Like Rhino's Iron Skin, Decoy is invulnerable for 3 seconds and will absorb all damage that will hit it, and then we'll add that to the health of the Decoy. Not only that, but Saryn will get 150% speed buff for 5 seconds, and when the Decoy is destroyed, it will do 400 toxin damage over a 10 meter range, and will have a 100% chance to apply a toxin status proc. Nice easy skill to understand here. Health, explosion damage, and the duration are affected by mods. The health and damage and the speed buff is by power strength, and the duration of the ability and the speed buff by duration mods, and the explosion radius by range mods. Honestly, this is basically it's a core part of Saryn's survivability. Draws aggro away from her, allows her to run away that little bit faster. Doesn't really last long at high level despite the damage absorbed thing, because there's no damage reduction on it. But the moment you allow yourself to get away really does help. One amusing way to use it is to stack strength and duration and speedrun low level missions like you're some distant cousin of Volt. It's amusing and kind of fun, although not that effective outside of being a fun build. But if you combine this with the augment regen Molt, you have something that not only allows you to run away faster and takes aggro from you, but also heals you too. What more could you want? Toxic Lash is also pretty simple now. When it's cast, Saryn will add an extra 30% more damage onto all of her weapons as toxin damage, which is doubled for melee. Every single hit with any of these weapons will inflict a toxin proc, which will tick for 50% of the bonus damage added. It will also boost your blocking damage reduction by 40%. That additional damage and blocking reduction is affected by power strength mods and the duration by duration mods, which is rather nice. In addition to that, all targets that are affected by spores will instantly have all spores popped on them by hitting anywhere on the affected target, and it's not just by hitting the spore directly either. Honestly, that's about all there is to it. Just quite frankly, there's no reason why you wouldn't have Toxic Lash up at all points. It's a huge amount of additional damage with no real downside. It's absolutely worth keeping up and just keeping an eye on it and recasting it as much as you can, because basically it's free damage on absolutely everything. So how much more do you want? And that brings me on to Saryn's final ability, Miasma. Another much simpler ability. When she casts it, she will deal 350 viral damage per second for 5 seconds over a 20-meter range, with a 100% chance to proc viral on all targets affected, which halves their health and also stuns them for a couple of seconds. It will also do double damage on those affected by spores. Another ability here that is affected by just about everything: damage by power strength, duration by duration mods, and range by range mods. Honestly, that's about it for Miasma. The damage isn't great at high level, but since it effectively causes everything else to do double damage because of the way the viral proc works, it's still got some really useful scaling, even if the damage has fallen off. At low level though, it does work as a bit of an AoE nuke, so it works at all levels depending on what you actually want it to do. In terms of my build, it's actually changed literally last night on stream because of a recommendation from Twitch chat. However, I have one main build, and that's the one that's on screen now. Now, the first thing you'll notice, I've depolarized my aura slot. This means it actually gives me the freedom to mess around with my auras without being specifically stuck on a single aura, which I find to be really rather nice. For my aura, I'm running Growing Power for the extra power strength when you proc status, which obviously helps a lot with damage, but Energy Siphon can be super useful on Saryn to help with some efficiency. Then I'm running a ton of power strength, Transient Fortitude, Intensify, Power Drift, and Augur Secrets for as much damage as possible, Augur Reach and Stretch for range, Vitality for health, Steel Fiber for armor, and then Hunter Adrenaline to turn health damage into energy. I'm also running Arcane Guardian for extra armor when you take damage, and Arcane Grace for the health regeneration also when you take damage. This actually makes me super tanky, and since I'm not running any efficiency, it allows me to be able to take a hit at higher level, and that keeps my energy levels up well enough because of the Hunter Adrenaline. I really have no energy problems whatsoever, and if I do, I'm using Generic for that quick boost of energy anyway, but that honestly is quite rare for the most part. I know that a lot of people are quite attached to the health regen from Regen Malt. However, personally I'm running Magus Elevate and Magus Nourish for healing on entering and exiting your frame. They're the Operator Arcanes for healing, so I use that to heal rather than I use the Augment. But you could easily drop something like Augur Secrets for the Regen Mult if you wanted to. So what does this all mean? What do I think of the Saryn rework? And honestly, I'm really loving it. I know this isn't for everyone because she has a very active play style. To get the most out of her, you really need to actively play her. Keep an eye on the spores, keep an eye on Toxic Lash, hit your Miasma when you think it's going to help kill a whole load quicker. Gone is the day where you can sit in a single spot and spam Spore on your Molt, or cast your infinite duration Spores and hide in a corner. I've had the footage from mostly a single Elite Sanctuary Onslaught going for this whole video so far, and you can see just how well she kills and just how effective this build is. It is super effective provided you pay attention to what you're doing. I run this solo for focus farming, and I always get like 20 or 30, between 20 or 30, sometimes 40k focus per focus crystal. And it's absolutely fantastic for that, but more than that, it's a ton of fun to play. I don't mind you have to actively play her at all, rather than just set and forget. That being said, she does have a couple of issues. If you're on a match with a good Equinox, you might have some problems getting the spores to spread, because Equinox is so good at deleting entire rooms. At which point it doesn't cause your spores to spread around at all and can make it so that Saryn becomes very, very energy hungry. I don't find her to be normally, but with an Equinox there's so much recasting going on, and because all of your spores get deleted, you also don't get the half cost to recast. Not only that, but she can't stack damage that well because she doesn't get any time to do anything before the decay kicks in when the entire room gets deleted. That's also a problem at lower level too, to be honest. With the removal of a passive spread, it makes keeping spores going at lower level actually super difficult. Especially since the number of new keyframes becomes that much higher, because the damage threshold isn't, you don't need the same amount of damage as you do in like Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. But you just end up relying more on the damage from Miasma rather than using your spores, which kind of brings back the feeling of the old Miasma spam Saryn. But in general, I much prefer this Saryn to the other two versions. I'm amazed that there are still some people that consider this to be a nerf. And honestly, if this is a nerf, they can feel free to nerf my Nyx any day of the week. Saryn is fantastic now. I found her to be a ton of fun to play, mostly because of the fact that, to get the most out of her, you actually do need to actively play her. I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on the Saryn rework though in the comments below. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video. Many thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.